Hey guys, just a short video on how to remove the overwhelm and financial stresses in your business. In particular, the three main problems that stop you from getting to that point where you feel confidently in control and the financial stresses are removed and you feel like you're actually getting somewhere in your business and also in your personal life. In particular, I'm talking to tradies at the moment and what I call the concept of a savvy tradie. So let's go through these three main problems and start to look a little bit deeper into what we need to do to overcome the overwhelm and how to get past these financial stresses.
Okay, so let's first of all consider what a savvy trade is. So most people think of general trades such as builders, sparkies, plumbers, etc. So we class savvy trades as a broader category. So it might include security technicians, it might include various installers, people doing solar, basically anything that involves manual labour and typically having a crew around you. So when we're talking about being a savvy tradesman, we're talking about something bigger than just yourself. So typically that involves having a crew on board. You've probably got a few vehicles on the road. You're typically looking at developing a business as opposed to just a trade in your own name. So that's the essential part of being a savvy trade. Now, why would you want to be a savvy tradesman? Typically, it's trying to take that leap from simply just trading your time for money and converting that to something that's a lot bigger in the grand scheme of things, something that's going to be able to allow you to build not only an income, but also an asset. Now, when we talk about business, we talk about the similarities between small business and, let's say, shares in a public company. Something like, let's use Telstra as an example. So if you hold some Telstra shares, you hold a very small component of ownership in that company. And each year, you get two things from that company, typically. You will get a dividend, which is a distribution of the profit that the business makes. And then you'll also, hopefully, get capital growth from that. And that's the value of the company. Now, if you're just a single tradesman who's out there plying their wares and just trading time for money, then you're not really building an asset. You're never going to have capital growth. And there will come a day when your back gives in or your shoulder gives in or your knees give in, and you're simply going to have to stop doing what you're doing and do something else for a career. Or you'll just rely on your superannuation or typically the assets that you've built along the way. Now, as tradies, you're very well versed in possibly building your own property, renovating your own property, doing various things to build assets and investments over time. That's all good and well, but typically by building a business, you will end up in a much better wealth position and a much better personal position in terms of fulfillment than what you will by just doing the day-to-day by yourself. There's nothing wrong with that, but we always, as business coaches, we always try to drive people to be more than simply just time for money, the simple exchange. So hopefully that highlights to you what a savvy trade is. And typically to be a savvy trade, you've got to scale by having team members and having more happening than just yourself. So I see a number of different things happening within the trades industry. The first of those is overwhelm. And this typically is the start of scaling. So overwhelm is typically because you don't have enough resources to get through the work. You've started, you've built demand in the business up to a level where things are going well, and then you're finding that you're taking on so much work that you're just not getting through it. So you become very overwhelmed in that. The other reason for overwhelm is that you typically then grow with a team and it just becomes way too hard to handle. So you just extend yourself further and further, and you start pulling your hair out at the frustrations, and you go, you know what, it's easier for me to just do it myself. And that's a real shame, because you never get past those first stages of scaling your business. The second thing that I see in terms of tradesmen going to what we call a savvy trades business is the mess in their finances. So most tradesmen will typically have their partner, their spouse, do the bookwork. If not, they will typically find the cheapest bookkeeper that they can possibly find. As you move to being a more savvy trades business, you'll recognise that there is technology that can help with this. It's worth investing in a good bookkeeper and a good accountant to help you with this. And then as you move through to savvy trade, you start to realise that you need to understand what the numbers mean. It's not good enough to just handball it onto somebody else. You need to understand what all of these numbers mean, at least enough to have a sensible conversation with your advisors. So messy finances is typically one that's there. So you're earning a lot of money and the money's going out just as fast as it's coming in. You tend to be very cyclical. At the moment, that's not the case, but certainly the construction industry and trades as a whole tend to go through cycles. So messy finances is the second of the big problems that we see. The third of the big problems that I see in moving from a sole tradie through to being a savvy tradie is that they just don't have a clear plan. So ask yourself, do you have a clear plan of where you're heading in your business? Where do you want to be in 12 months' time? Now, a lot of people are saying, oh yeah, but if we'd have had a plan during COVID, it would have gone straight out the window and everything would have changed, etc. Now, the reason you have a plan is to look at those contingencies. It's a bit like when you have the GPS on in your car and you maybe miss a turn and then the GPS has to recalculate. Or you get the voice in your ear going, turn back, do a U-turn, turn now. So a plan helps you do that. A plan helps you look at different contingencies and move with the plan as you go through things. Not having a plan means you're just rudderless. You're dealing with everything out of your head. Oh, I keep my plan in my head. Well, that's fantastic. But what it means is when you've got it in your head, you're always changing it. The plan's always changing because the thoughts in your head are always changing. Does that sound familiar? I think so. So you need to get a plan out and have it as a flexible plan. And we can talk a little bit more about that in the future. So the first thing we have to do with Overwhelm is we've got to get organised. And in terms of getting organised with Overwhelm, the first part of that is looking at your sales management, so how your customers come into your business. And then once you get the customers in there, what's the workflow? So how are those jobs being signed up? How are those jobs then flowing through the system and being delivered? And then what's happening on the invoicing side of things when those jobs go out? So there's a whole heap of different parts that are moving within that workflow and sales management process. And we typically find that, again, once you start scaling, if there's issues when it's small, then those issues are just magnified the bigger that you get. And you might have heard of the saying, grow yourself out of business. And this is typically why, because people aren't geared up with the business skills. Great on the tools, but not necessarily on the business skills. And that's where a really good coach and a good accountant can really come in worthwhile. The second of these is time management. So there's some really simple skills that you can learn to apply to time management in your business. And it's not necessarily the time that you spend on the job, but it's the time dealing with all those other things as a business owner. It's helping your team deal with their time better, the allocation of your team to jobs and the monitoring of the time that's spent on various tasks within the job. So all of this comes under time management. There's a number of key skills that can be taught and learnt, in the time management space. Sure, you can find all of these neat little ways of dealing with time management that are out there. There's 101 books, 101 YouTube videos about time management, but you need to get something that works for you. And one of the key things that I work on when I'm talking to a tradie or even just any small business owner is looking at what they do during their day or their week and starting to look at the things that they shouldn't be doing and how we can rid them of doing those tasks. That's the first step. And then the second is looking at what's stopping them from doing the things that they should be doing. The old procrastination or the distraction is typically what creeps in there. So that's time management, where you really need to get a good handle on that. Accountability is another big one. It's having somebody there to make sure that what you say you are going to do is done. It's not a hand-holding exercise. It's not a babysitting exercise. It's more having just that sounding board to keep you accountable, because we all fall down if we're just relying on ourselves to keep us there. And when I ask people who keeps you accountable, most people say it's either a friend, a co-worker, or a spouse. And sometimes friends, co-workers, and spouses are just too afraid to tell you what you need to know. And you need somebody to hold you accountable that's not afraid of that their job is to tell you the hard words. Messy finances, how do we deal with those? So we've got to get control of your numbers. And the first part of that, which I mentioned before, is getting a really good understanding of your numbers. I run a course for small businesses called Operation Bean Counter, and it's not designed to turn people into an accountant, but it's certainly designed to get people to the stage where they can have an intelligent conversation with their advisors. And the better the conversations are that you can have with your advisors, the higher level of those, the better your business is going to be off, and the more value you're going to get for your advisor dollar. A lot of people just front up and go, oh, look, it's all gobbledygook to me, it doesn't help. If you think of yourself as a trade, when you have a customer who knows enough to be able to have a sensible conversation with you, how much better a service can you offer? I'm not talking about the customers that are a pain in the backside when they think they know everything, but I'm talking about the ones who they kind of know what they want. It becomes an easier journey, yeah, for you to be able to deliver your service. So understanding your numbers is key. Automating your bookwork. This is where technology comes into it. There's so many ways as a tradesperson that you can now automate your bookwork. Gone are the days of shoving everything in a box and handing it on to a bookkeeper. You just don't do that anymore. There are some really savvy guys out there who are using technology, and they're racing ahead of the competition simply because they've really got in early. They've adopted the automation and they've really run with it, and it's now paying dividends to them 10 times over. So you've really got to learn about what you can automate and then go about doing it, and doing it properly with somebody who knows what they're talking about. You've got to have the proper structure in your business, and you've got to understand how you're taxed. And again, this comes back to understanding your numbers and being able to have those sensible conversations. So a lot of tradespeople get caught up in this, oh, look, I've got to be a company because the guy next door is a company. It's not necessarily the case. Sometimes companies bring with it too much complexity. But if you're a savvy tradesman and you get good advisors around you, then they can talk with you to help you understand the structure and then choose the appropriate structure, not only for your business, but also for your wealth creation in terms of the other assets that you end up owning. So certainly asset protection, succession, all of those things come into structure and are very, very important. And we find that there's a lot of gaps when it comes to trades within that area. Even the savvy trades have difficulty in that area. If you've got no clear plan in your business at the moment, you need to become laser focused to solve that problem. You need to just concentrate on what needs to be done to achieve what it is that you want to do. Now, if you haven't decided what you want to do, then that's the perfect time to make the plan. Work out where you are now, where do you want to go, and how the hell you're going to get there. So the first thing you've got to do is get that plan out of your head. It's no point having it here because, as I said, you get distracted. You continually change the plan because it's easy to change because it's all in your head. It's not written down. You don't even have to scribble it out. You just change those thoughts that are in your head and all of a sudden you've got a new plan. Now, if you've got a team and they're trying to follow the business and where the business is going, there's a total detachment there because they've got no idea where the business is going because it's all in your head and it could change on a daily basis. So you've got to get that plan out of your head, get a flexible plan down on paper. You then need to move to setting some targets for your business because otherwise we just go with the flow and do the jobs and we become reactive. We really need to get targets because targets drive efficiency and targets help us get all of that time management and accountability and workflow management happening down in the getting organised area. And we can keep track of those targets in the control your numbers area. And the targets help us be focused on making the dream work. If we want to get somewhere, we've got to have targets. And we've got to chunk those targets down into small sections so as we can actually achieve things. And the last part of being laser focused is the implementation. Once you've got your plan out of your head and once you've set some targets, then you can move on to the implementation side of things and then really start to get those actions happening. So any good flexible plan has an objective. What is it that you're trying to do and when by? Then it has the strategies. How are you actually going to achieve it? And then it has the actions, which is who the hell's going to do it? And when do we want them to do it by? And that's the implementation part, is the actions. So hopefully that gives you a really good handle on what makes up a savvy trade and how we can attack those three problems that I see over and over again when somebody's trying to move from being a sole tradie through to being a savvy tradie.
So that's the 9 main areas that we work on when we're looking at addressing overwhelm, financial stresses and lack of progress in the business. Now, if you'd like to know a little bit more about how we work with clients on this, in particular our Savvy Trades business program, all you need to do is comment below, tradie, and I'll get some information out with details of the program and how you can become involved in addressing those issues within your business. I hope to talk to you soon.